In our house, the words were before camp, during camp, or after the war. So that's how timelines were established.
Janice Munemitsu is a third-generation Japanese American and author of Kindness of Color. Like many Japanese families, her grandfather, Seima Munemitsu, immigrated to the United States from Japan and began farming prior to the U.S. involvement in World War II.
So my grandfather, now had worked in the Carson Ranch, probably 12 to 13 years, and had enough knowledge and had saved enough that he would have loved to have bought his own farmland. But the alien land laws at the time restricted the Chinese and Japanese from owning land because they weren't citizens. So he was able to lease 40 acres of property in Westminster from an older woman who was not farming.
Later, Seima was offered the right of first refusal to own the land he was leasing. But because of the alien land law, it would have to go to Seima's son and Janice's father, Tad Munemitsu, who was a U.S. citizen.
Along the way, when my dad was about 8 years old, he started to go to the bank, Garden Grove First National Bank, with his dad, with my grandpa, to kind of translate, English to Japanese and Japanese to English. And in the back of his mind, he was probably thinking, this is a good way for him to learn as well.
Tad Munemitsu found a mentor in a banker named Frank Monroe.
I mean, my dad said he's the best friend you could ever have. He didn't have a prejudice bone in his body. So it kind of tells you what my dad also experienced with other people outside of Mr. Monroe, if that's what he's going to, say about Monroe.
Aware of the incarceration happening to Japanese Americans, Tad Munemitsu turned to Mr. Monroe to help him keep the family farm.
Japan bombs Pearl Harbor. Now I'm an American, but I look like I'm Japanese, so now I'm seen as an enemy because of my name and the color of my skin. So what are we going to do? Mr. Monroe says, let's count on the best outcome. There's all these scenarios what could happen, but the best outcome is the war will end and you'll be able to come back. So given that, let's see if we could lease this land.
Monroe found another trusted client of his to lease the land, Gonzalo Mendez, who agreed to care for the land while Seima was gone.
Mr. Monroe goes to Gonzalo and says, hey, what do you think? Would you consider leasing this farm? And everything's there. You don't really even have to do much to get started because it's all there. You lease the whole thing. And so he and Felicitas, his wife, decided, yeah, let's go for it.
Trusting Mr. Monroe, Tad leased the farm to Gonzalo Mendez just before his family is forced from their home. The Munemitsu family is separated, as Seima, the patriarch of the family, is taken to a high-security incarceration camp in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Seima's twin daughters, Kazuko and Akiko, who were 7 years old at the time, recall the day their father was taken.
Well, I remember my mom holding my hand because I was homesick with the chicken pox or one of those, I don't know, whatever. I think chicken pox, but anyway, there's this man. He's in a suit, he's got a hat on, and he doesn't smile, very stern-faced, and then they took my dad, My mom was crying, but I really didn't know what was going on.
I wasn't home because I was at school, and so when I came home, I was just like, I didn't know what was going on because there were people in the house going through things and stuff. But other than that, I don't remember too much. Then after that, I realized that we had to go to.
Kazi and Aki contracted the measles, and while their mom is taken to Poston in Arizona, they are sent to a local hospital until they could recover and reunite with their mom in the camp.
Oh God, it was so good to see Mom. Oh, I tell you. And I think, it was something that you just can't explain. It's there. When you don't see your mom for a while and so on, You know, it's just like kids, it's just like any other kid. You miss your mom.
Most of what they remember about the camp is the Arizona heat.
A lot of sand and dusty. Yeah, that's what I remember. Other than that, it was just the hottest place in the world.
A group got together and we dug underneath the barracks, and that was our playhouse. You know, we had bookcases and, you know, whatever things we could scrounge up or people would give us, and that was where we used to play and, you know, and sing and play games together. But it was so hot that you go underneath that cellar, cool.
The family spent 3 years separated from each other. Once Japanese Americans were free to return home, many found that their land was damaged or stolen. But the Mendez family took care of the Munemitsu's farmland in their absence, keeping the terms of the lease. However, at this time, the Mendez family had to stay in Westminster as they fought a legal battle against the segregation of Mexican American students, known as Mendez v. Westminster.
My dad and Gonzalo come up with kind of a unusual solution. Now Gonzalo is in the midst of a federal court case called Mendez et al. Versus Westminster. Mendez has to stay in Westminster. The Munemitsus want to go back from Poston back to the farm. There's one farmhouse, one barn, and 4 workers' cottages. So what they end up doing is my dad and grandpa decide we're going to come back, live in the workers' cottage. Gonzalo, you stay and you continue to lease it, so there's no changes to any of your legal documentation with this case.
The Munemitsu family worked for daily wages, allowing the Mendez family to stay in the Westminster School District for their court case and still have some profits from the farm. Despite the unusual situation, the Munemitsu family is happy to be home.
At least we had a place to go back to that was familiar. You know, the old red barn and all, you know, the asparagus and whatever that was there at the time, still there. So, and the people, the Mendez family helped us too.
The Munemitsu family relied on the kindness of the Mendez family and old friends as the children returned to school.
I was so apprehensive that, you know, we were away for 3 years or so, and then here we were on a school bus and we get to our school. You don't know what's going to happen, but this friend from kindergarten, Beverly Seelig Rosen now, she was there to greet Aki and I, and to make sure that none of the kids made any kind of derogatory remarks. And to this day, I will always remember her kindness and for her standing up for us.
Orange County was home to many Japanese American families prior to the war. Around 1,900 Japanese residents were sent to incarceration camps. Most lost their homes, businesses, and farms. Because of this, the Munemitsu family opened up their land to Japanese incarcerees who had nowhere to go.
Because my dad and grandpa were back. And in fact, because there were more than one workers' cottage, my dad and grandfather invited other Japanese families who didn't have a place to go. So some of our closest family friends were among those. But now I'm finding out, having written this book, I'm now finding out there were other people who came through. If they needed a place to stay for a couple weeks before they got their feet on the ground, if they needed to work and make some money so that they could go rent a place. So it kind of became like this little small village.
Once the Mendez family won their case, they moved off the farm, but the two families remained connected because of the impact they had on each other. The Munemitsu family is grateful for the kindness of strangers during a difficult time.
I think having friends you could trust, family family, friends, or neighbors or workers that you could trust made a huge difference. And a lot of times people will ask me when I'm speaking if they're surprised that I don't have more resentment, or that my parents, my father and my grandfather didn't have more resentment. And I said, well, I'm sure my dad and grandfather had resentment. I mean, it would be not human if you didn't, right? I think how you choose to work through that, how you choose to go forward is what makes a difference.